She only came to wait for her dad. But what happened inside the jewelry store will make your blood boil. A young black girl falsely accused, humiliated, and handcuffed, and all of this happened in her father's store. Watch till the end to see how justice was served. Don't forget to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Your support means everything. The soft chime above the door sang as Kiana Jefferson stepped into the boutique. The inside of the store gleamed under warm ceiling lights, reflecting off polished glass display cases filled with diamond rings, gold bracelets, and elegant necklaces. The sweet scent of fresh-cut orchids lingered in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of leather from high-end jewelry boxes. It felt calm, peaceful, familiar. Kiana was 13, with deep brown skin, neatly braided hair tied with a thin silver ribbon, and school books weighing down her backpack. Her uniform was still crisp from a long day of classes. She had come here straight from school like she always did when her father was working late. Today, though, her father, Marcus Jefferson, wasn't in the boutique. He had a business meeting downtown, and he'd texted her just 15 minutes ago to let her know to wait inside until he got back or until one of the staff could walk her home. She didn't mind waiting. In fact, she loved it here. This boutique, Jefferson and Company, wasn't just a store. It was a symbol of everything her father had built from the ground up. From a single kiosk in a mall to a full-fledged high-end jewelry shop nestled between luxury fashion stores in the city's elite district, Marcus had created something extraordinary. Kiana had grown up watching her father polish rings, talk with customers, and greet every guest with the warmth and pride of someone who had fought for everything he had. This store was part of her childhood, a second home. She wandered slowly between the display cases, letting her fingers glide lightly across the smooth glass. Each case held something dazzling: engagement rings with princess-cut diamonds, earrings with sapphire stones, gold pendants etched with tiny, intricate designs. One case displayed a necklace she especially loved, a teardrop-shaped emerald surrounded by white gold. Kiana leaned down to look closer, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. She didn't touch anything. She never did. Her father had always told her to respect the displays, even if it was her store too. And she did. She simply loved admiring the pieces, imagining the people who might wear them. As she stood back up, she heard the sound of approaching heels. The rhythm was sharp and fast, echoing through the quiet boutique like a warning bell. Kiana turned slightly to see a tall white woman walking toward her. Slender frame, cold expression, and neatly tied blonde hair. She wore a black blazer with a name tag that read Miss Conway. Kiana had seen her only once before. She was a new hire, recently brought on to manage the front floor, but they hadn't spoken. Now, Miss Conway was looking at her like she didn't belong there. "Can I help you?" Miss Conway asked, her voice tight, clipped, not friendly, not curious, suspicious. Kiana blinked, startled by the tone. "No, thank you. I'm just waiting for my dad," she said softly. Miss Conway's eyes narrowed. "And your father is?" "Marcus Jefferson," Kiana replied. "He owns the store." The woman paused, her expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. But slowly, her eyes still watching Kiana as if she didn't quite believe her. Kiana's stomach twisted. She tried to ignore it. Maybe Miss Conway was just doing her job. Maybe she was just being careful. But still, something didn't feel right. She glanced back at the necklace, then moved away, heading toward one of the display shelves near the back, the one with smaller items, charm bracelets, cufflinks, and tiny, delicate pins shaped like stars and moons. She didn't notice that Miss Conway had returned to the main counter. The woman was still watching her. Kiana reached into her bag to pull out a notebook. She sat down on the bench near the back wall, where she always waited for her dad, and started sketching the necklace she had just seen. She loved drawing, and jewelry design had fascinated her lately. She hoped one day to create something for the store herself, something meaningful. Just as she began shading the emerald, she heard footsteps approaching again. Quick, deliberate. She looked up. Miss Conway was standing in front of her, arms crossed. "I don't think you're supposed to be back here," she said sharply. Kiana hesitated. "I'm just sitting—" "This is a retail space, not a playground," Miss Conway snapped. "Customers don't sit back here and draw in their notebooks." "I'm not a customer," Kiana said, keeping her voice calm. "My dad owns—" "Enough," Miss Conway cut in. "I've seen enough." Kiana stood up, confused. "What do you mean?" "You've been walking around, touching the displays, acting suspicious," she said, "and now you're hiding back here with your bag wide open." "I wasn't hiding," Kiana said, stunned, "and I didn't take anything. I was just drawing." Miss Conway suddenly stepped past her and leaned toward her backpack. "What's in here?" she demanded. "Don't touch my stuff," Kiana cried out, backing away. Miss Conway didn't care. She pulled the bag up and rifled through it roughly, flipping through books and papers until she found nothing but pencils and a sandwich wrapped in foil. She straightened, her face tight with frustration. "Empty-handed now, but I'm not stupid," she said coldly. "You were up to something." "No, I wasn't," Kiana said, her voice cracking. "Don't lie to me." Miss Conway leaned down, her face inches away. "You people think you can just walk in and help yourselves? Not here." Those words hit Kiana like ice. "You people." She backed away, blinking fast, her hands trembling. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "This is my dad's store." Miss Conway pulled out her phone. "Then your daddy can come get you from the police station," she said flatly, "because I'm calling them right now." Kiana froze. Her knees felt weak. "No, please don't call them." Her voice cracked. "Just call my dad. Please. His number is—" "I'm not interested in any more of your lies," Miss Conway said, turning away as she dialed. Kiana's body was shaking now. She could hear the woman calmly telling someone on the other end of the line that there had been a suspected theft, that she had restrained the suspect, that she was securing the scene. It felt like a nightmare, one she couldn't wake up from. She looked around the store, trying to find a camera, a familiar face, anything, but she was alone. She sat back down, breath shallow, heart racing, eyes locked on the door, waiting, hoping, praying that her father would come back before the nightmare got worse. But outside the store, 2 police officers were already walking toward the entrance. And Kiana knew the quiet day was over. It had just turned into something else entirely. The door to the boutique swung open with a quiet jingle. Kiana didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the floor, her breath shallow. Her body trembled with the weight of dread she couldn't explain, dread that shouldn't exist inside the store her father built with love and pride. But here it was, tightening in her chest like a vice. She heard the footsteps before she saw them, heavy, firm, 2 sets, then the voices. "Afternoon. We received a call about a possible theft?" "That's right," Miss Conway's voice responded quickly. "It's that girl there. She's been wandering around the store, acting suspicious. I caught her handling a display and hiding in the back. I think she was trying to take something." Kiana slowly raised her head. Two police officers stood just inside the doorway. Both white, both tall, both with blank, unreadable expressions. One had his hand resting near his holstered taser. The other narrowed his eyes as he scanned the boutique. The taller one spoke. "Is that true, miss?" Kiana's voice came out barely above a whisper. "No, sir. I didn't do anything. I was just waiting for my dad." "She says her father owns the place," Miss Conway scoffed, "but you can guess how likely that is." The officers exchanged glances. One of them stepped closer. "You got ID?" he asked flatly. "I'm 13, Kiana replied, her voice trembling. "I don't have ID, but my dad is Marcus Jefferson. This is his store. He just stepped out for a meeting. You can call him, please." Miss Conway cut in before the officer could respond. "There's no record of her on staff. No proof she's related to Mr. Jefferson. I suggest you do your job and remove her before she damages something." Kiana felt her throat tighten. Her chest heaved. "Please, just call my dad. He'll explain." The shorter officer moved behind her suddenly and grabbed her upper arm. "Stand up," he said. She froze. "Wait, no, please, I didn't do anything. Now." He yanked her to her feet. Her sketchbook dropped to the ground with a slap. The pages fluttered open. The emerald necklace she had drawn lay half-finished. The officer didn't even glance at it. He twisted her around and pulled her arms behind her back. Kiana gasped. "No, please, I didn't take anything." Cold metal pressed against her wrists as he locked the handcuffs in place. The click echoed in her ears like a final sentence. Tears filled her eyes, hot and helpless. "You don't understand. I didn't steal. I didn't—" "You can explain it at the station," the taller cop said as he reached for her backpack. "No!" she cried, jerking away instinctively. The shorter officer responded by tightening his grip. "Settle down. You're only making this worse." Miss Conway watched with her arms crossed, eyes filled with triumph. "I told you she was trouble." They marched Kiana forward, her sneakers squeaking weakly against the polished floor. Her heart pounded so hard it made her dizzy. The room spun around her. The boutique that had always felt like a dream now felt like a nightmare. Sharp, cruel, and cold. As they neared the door, Kiana's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't let them take her. Not without telling her father. In a desperate moment of clarity, she twisted her wrist as much as the cuffs would allow and reached toward her jacket pocket. It was just barely within reach. "Stop resisting," one of the officers warned, but Kiana ignored him. Her fingertips brushed against her phone. She managed to hook the edge and slide it out. The phone slipped and fell to the ground. One of the officers reached to take it. "No!" she screamed. The taller officer hesitated. "Let her make a call," he muttered to his partner. Kiana dropped to her knees as far as the cuffs would let her and scooped up the phone with both bound hands. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked it with her thumb and pulled up her father's number. She hit call. The phone rang once, twice, then, "Baby girl," came the deep, steady voice on the other end. "Everything okay?" Kiana's breath hitched. "Daddy, please, you have to come, now." "What? What's wrong?" "They think I stole something," she sobbed. "They called the police. They put me in handcuffs. Daddy, I didn't do anything, I swear." The line was quiet for a heartbeat. Then Marcus Jefferson's voice changed, sharp, cutting, full of steel. "Where are you exactly?" "In the store," she whispered. "They're taking me out the front. I'm on my way." The call ended. The officers pulled her to her feet again, clearly impatient now. The phone dropped again, but Kiana didn't care. Her father knew. He was coming. They stepped out onto the sidewalk. A few pedestrians glanced over in curiosity, some frowning at the sight of a small black girl in cuffs being led from a luxury jewelry store. Kiana kept her head down, tears running silently down her cheeks. Inside, Miss Conway straightened a display and returned to the counter. She didn't see what the problem was. She had followed protocol. She had done what any responsible employee would do, but her confidence was about to shatter. 5 minutes later, the boutique door flew open again. Marcus Jefferson stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored charcoal gray suit, and radiated an authority that instantly filled the room. His eyes scanned the space like a storm was building inside them. Miss Conway smiled brightly. "Mr. Jefferson, you're back. I took care of the situation for you." "Where is she?" he said, his voice like a blade. Miss Conway blinked. "Who?" "My daughter," he snapped. "Where is she?" The sidewalk outside the boutique was quiet, the early evening sun casting a soft orange glow across the pavement. Cars passed slowly along the boulevard, their drivers unaware of the scene unfolding in front of Jefferson and company. But for Kiana Jefferson, every second outside felt like a spotlight, as if the entire world could see her shame. The handcuffs dug painfully into her wrists. Her arms ached from the awkward way the officers had pulled her out of the store. The taller officer held one arm, while the shorter one walked closely behind her, his hand resting near his belt. She wasn't resisting, but they treated her like she was dangerous, like she was guilty. Miss Conway remained just inside the doorway, her arms crossed smugly, her posture proud. She watched Kiana with that same contemptuous look she'd worn from the beginning, the look of someone who believed they had done the right thing, even when they hadn't. Kiana wanted to scream, to beg someone to stop this. But no one looked. No one listened. People walked past the boutique, some slowing to stare for a moment, then moving on, uninterested. To them, she was just another kid in trouble, just another story. She kept whispering to herself through the tears, "He's coming. He's coming." The police car parked along the curb was unmarked but unmistakable. One of the officers opened the back door and motioned for Kiana to get in. She looked at him, eyes red and lips trembling. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "I didn't steal anything." "Tell it to your dad when he gets here," the taller officer muttered. She hesitated, heart pounding. What if he didn't get there in time? What if they took her away before she could explain? What if this ended up on the news? "Now," the shorter officer snapped, giving her a firm nudge. Kiana stepped forward reluctantly, climbing into the back seat. The door slammed shut behind her, the click of the lock sounding like a prison gate. The inside of the cruiser was cold. The seat was hard plastic, and her cuffed hands forced her to sit awkwardly. She sniffled, trying to control her breathing, but panic was rising again. Her mind raced. How could this happen? How could they not believe her? She hadn't even touched anything, just watched, just drew, just waited. The sound of voices outside broke her spiraling thoughts. What is going on here? The voice was deep, familiar. Her father. Marcus Jefferson stood on the sidewalk now, his shoulders squared, his face unreadable. He had parked just around the corner, rushing from the meeting the moment he got his daughter's call. His tall frame towered over the two officers, who turned toward him with a mix of hesitation and uncertainty. "Sir," the taller officer began, "this is a private matter between the store and the suspect." "She's not a suspect," Marcus said flatly. She's my daughter." The words landed like a punch. Both officers blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Miss Conway stepped outside, her face pale. "She's... what?" Marcus took a step forward, his jaw tight. "You called the police on my daughter. You put her in handcuffs in my store without checking who she was, without calling me." Miss Conway's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes flicked toward Kiana, who was now staring at her father through the back window of the cruiser. "Sir, with all due respect," the shorter officer said cautiously, "we were acting on a report from the employee. We had no idea." "You didn't ask," Marcus snapped. "You didn't even think. You just saw a young black girl and assumed the worst." "We followed protocol." "Protocol," Marcus said, his voice suddenly louder. "What protocol allows you to arrest a child with no evidence? No witnesses? No theft?" The officers exchanged glances, now clearly uncomfortable. Miss Conway stepped back, visibly shrinking. "Unlock the door," Marcus demanded. The taller officer hesitated, then walked to the cruiser and opened the back door. Kiana stepped out slowly, her arms still locked behind her. "Take those off," Marcus said, pointing to the cuffs. "Sir, now." The shorter officer quickly pulled the keys from his belt and unlocked the handcuffs. Kiana rubbed her wrists red and sore. The marks were deep, and her hands trembled from the pain. She looked up at her father with wide, tear-streaked eyes. "Daddy." He pulled her into his arms immediately, hugging her tightly. "I'm here," he whispered. "I've got you." She held on to him like he was the only solid thing left in the world. Marcus turned his head slowly toward Miss Conway. His face was still, but his eyes burned. "You called the police on my daughter," he said again. "You accused her. You humiliated her. You put your hands on her." I didn't know," Miss Conway stammered. "She didn't say. She looked suspicious." "You're done," Marcus said, his voice icy. "You're fired, and you're going to answer for what you did." "Mr. Jefferson, please. I was just..." "Out," he growled, "right now, before I press charges for assault." Miss Conway turned and fled inside the store without another word. Marcus turned back to the officers. "She is a minor," he said slowly, "and you treated her like a criminal, without cause, without investigation, without basic human decency." "Sir, we didn't know. You should have," he interrupted. "You both should have." There was a long silence. "I want your names, your badge numbers, and I want you to report this incident as an unlawful detainment of a child." The officers gave him the information, their voices low. Shame hung in the air like fog. Kiana stood beside her father now, still shaking, still silent. Marcus placed a hand gently on her back. "Let's go inside," he said quietly. "We're not finished." As they turned and walked toward the boutique, the door to Jefferson and Company opened with the same soft chime it always did. But the warmth was gone. This was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a battleground. The boutique was eerily quiet as Marcus guided Kiana back inside. His hand remained on her back, firm, protective, unwavering. The showroom still sparkled under the overhead lights, but the warmth was gone, replaced by something colder, heavier. Shame, disbelief, anger, it lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. Kiana's eyes darted toward the spot where Miss Conway had first confronted her. Her sketchbook still lay on the floor near the display case. The emerald necklace that inspired her drawing sparkled under the lights, untouched, perfect, innocent, just like she had been. She swallowed hard. Her wrists still throbbed from the handcuffs, the red marks clearly visible on her brown skin. Her father had noticed them too. The way his expression tightened when he saw them. She had never seen that look on him before, not even when she scraped her knee as a child. This was different. This was fury held back by sheer force of will. Marcus turned toward the officers who had followed them in. "You can wait over there," he said curtly, pointing to a spot near the front door. "You're not to touch her again. You've done enough." The two policemen exchanged a look, but neither dared argue. They moved to the spot Marcus indicated and stood silently, their posture tense, like children waiting to be scolded. Kiana sat on a low leather bench near the front counter. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her sketchbook, gathering it gently from the floor. She held it against her chest as if it could shield her from everything else. Marcus crouched in front of her, gently taking her chin and lifting her face. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, but tears began to well in her eyes again. "They didn't believe me," she whispered. "No one believed me." Marcus's throat tightened. "I believe you. Always." She looked down. "She said I look suspicious, and that I don't belong here." Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. He exhaled slowly, forcing the anger back down. This wasn't the time to explode. Not yet. Then Kiana looked up again, her voice a trembling whisper. "If I hadn't called you, would they have taken me away?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the answer was yes. She had been moments away from being driven off in the back of that unmarked cruiser, a 13-year-old girl, handcuffed and alone, accused of a crime she didn't commit. And all because a woman decided that a black child in a luxury jewelry store didn't fit. Kiana's phone lay beside her on the bench, the screen dark. Marcus reached down and picked it up. He turned it over slowly in his hands. This little device had been her only lifeline. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "You called me. You trusted me. I'll never let anything happen to you." She nodded again, but her shoulders still shook. Marcus stood and turned toward the officers. "You're going to write a report. You're going to document every single thing that happened. And you're going to include the fact that no theft occurred, no evidence was found, and that my daughter was detained without cause." The taller officer nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." "And I'll be filing a complaint," Marcus continued, "not just with your department, with the city. My lawyer will handle it from here." The officers remained silent. From the back office, a door creaked open. Miss Conway had returned. She hesitated in the doorway, her confidence shaken. Her arms were folded, but her shoulders drooped slightly now. The smugness she wore earlier had melted under the weight of her mistake. Marcus's gaze landed on her like a spotlight. "You've got 10 seconds to explain," he said sharply, "and I suggest you choose your words carefully." She took a breath. "Mr. Jefferson, I didn't know she was your daughter. I thought—" "You thought what?" he snapped. "That she didn't belong here? That she must be a thief? That my daughter, my child, would come into her own family's store and steal from it?" Miss Conway paled. "It's not what you think. She was acting strange, and She was sketching jewelry," Marcus interrupted. "She was sitting quietly, waiting for her father. You humiliated her, you violated her, and then you called the police." "I didn't know—" "No," he said, stepping forward. "You didn't care to know." The silence in the boutique became suffocating. Miss Conway opened her mouth again, but Marcus cut her off with a raised hand. "You're done here. You can leave through the front or with the police, but either way, your employment is over." Miss Conway's lips parted as if she might argue, but the look in Marcus's eyes silenced her. She turned, walking stiffly toward the front entrance, her heels clicking against the tile. When she passed by the officers, she couldn't meet their eyes. The door opened, closed. She was gone. Kiana watched from the bench, her shoulders slightly more relaxed now, but the weight of the day still heavy in her chest. Marcus returned to her side. "She won't hurt you again," he said. "I promise." "But what about everyone else?" Kiana asked, her voice small. "She's just one person." Marcus sat beside her. "You're right," he said quietly. "And that's why this isn't over. Not for me. Not for you. Not for anyone who's ever been treated like less than what they are." Kiana looked up at him, her eyes filled with something deeper than fear now. Something like resolve. She had called her father, and he had come. But she had also learned a hard truth, that even in the safest places she could still be targeted. Still, she had fought, and she wasn't alone. The air in the boutique was still heavy with everything that had just happened. The officers stood awkwardly near the entrance, avoiding Marcus Jefferson's gaze. Kiana remained seated at the bench, quiet, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her wrists were still red from the cuffs, and her eyes, though no longer wet with tears, reflected the weight of something no child should carry. Marcus paced slowly across the showroom floor. His movements were deliberate, controlled, but the fury behind them was unmistakable. Each step echoed through the boutique like a countdown. He turned sharply toward the officers. "You both saw her," he said, his voice low but forceful. "A 13-year-old girl. No weapon, no stolen merchandise, no fleeing. And yet, your first response was to handcuff her." "We were following a report of theft," the taller officer offered weakly. An employee who is now fired," Marcus cut in. "And who made that report based on nothing but her own racial bias?" The officers fell silent. "You didn't ask for proof. You didn't investigate. You didn't call me, despite her telling you repeatedly who she was and whose store this is. You didn't even ask to see footage from the cameras," Marcus continued, his voice rising. "What you did was act on the word of one white woman who decided my daughter didn't belong." He stopped pacing and faced them fully. "My daughter almost ended up in the back of your cruiser. You could have ruined her future, traumatized her permanently. For what? Because she was black and breathing in a place you thought she shouldn't be?" The shorter officer spoke, his tone tight. "We didn't mean—" "But you did," Marcus said, eyes narrowing. "You meant every assumption, every action, because you didn't stop to think that she might be innocent, that she might be telling the truth." Kiana watched her father, feeling something stir inside her, a mixture of pride, gratitude, and a painful understanding that this wasn't just about her anymore. It never was. Marcus turned to her then, his voice softening. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded faintly, though her body still trembled. "I'm trying." He reached for her hand, gently brushing his thumb over her sore wrist. "You were so brave," he whispered. "I'm proud of you." Kiana's lip quivered. She looked away quickly, trying to hold back the tears again. Then the door opened with another chime. Miss Conway stepped back into the boutique. Her posture had changed. The confident stride was gone. Her shoulders sagged, her hands twisted nervously in front of her. The pride had drained from her face, replaced by something closer to fear. Marcus's expression turned to stone. "What are you doing here?" he asked coldly. She hesitated. I wanted to explain." "There's nothing to explain." "Please, Mr. Jefferson," she pleaded. "I didn't know who she was. I swear I thought—" "You thought wrong," Marcus said, "and because of that, you put your hands on a child. You called the police. You escalated a situation that didn't exist. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "But you did," Marcus snapped. "You humiliated her. You left marks on her wrists. You made her feel like a criminal in her own father's store." Miss Conway looked at Kiana, who now stared back at her with quiet strength. Her eyes were no longer pleading, they were steady. "I'm sorry," Miss Conway said softly. "Truly, I let my assumptions take over. I thought I was protecting the store, but I see now that I wasn't. I was wrong." Marcus didn't answer right away. He stared at her for a long moment, and then he nodded once, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. "Your apology doesn't undo what you did," he said, "but I hope it teaches you something, because the next time you make that kind of mistake, it might destroy someone's life." She nodded slowly, shame tightening her face. "I understand." "Then go," Marcus said. She turned and left for the last time. The boutique felt quiet again, but not peaceful. Marcus turned back to the officers. "You can leave too. I have your badge numbers. Expect a call from my lawyer." The shorter officer opened his mouth to respond, but Marcus raised a hand. "Just go." They exited without a word, the door shutting behind them with a dull finality. Only Marcus and Kiana remained. He sat beside her again and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. "Is it?" she asked. He paused. "No," he admitted. "But today we made sure they won't forget what they did. And tomorrow I'll make sure they answer for it." Kiana leaned against him. For the first time all day, her breathing slowed. "I love you, Daddy." He closed his eyes and exhaled. "I love you too, baby girl, more than anything." They sat in silence, surrounded by gold and diamonds, in a boutique that had been a dream, and now a battleground. The next morning, the air in the city felt different, crisp, focused, as if the silence from the day before had been replaced by something heavier, something watchful. The events at Jefferson and Company were no longer confined to the boutique's polished floor. They had spread. By sunrise, Marcus Jefferson had already spoken with his legal team. 3 attorneys, all highly respected, all seasoned, sat across from him in his office, reviewing body cam footage, security tapes, and copies of official police reports from the incident. Kiana, meanwhile, remained at home with her aunt, still shaken but safe. Marcus didn't want her to return to the store just yet. Not until everything was made right. The footage from the boutique's security cameras was irrefutable. It captured everything in crisp HD, Miss Conway confronting Kiana without cause, grabbing her backpack, placing a hand on her shoulder, then dialing 911. It recorded Kiana's terrified face, her trembling hands, the arrival of the police, the handcuffs, the moment she collapsed in tears, begging to call her father. "Legally," one of the attorneys said, leaning forward, "we have them on multiple violations: unlawful detainment, excessive force on a minor, racial profiling, failure to verify identity before arrest. The list doesn't end there." Marcus didn't smile. "And Miss Conway?" "Civil suit for assault, and potentially more. She put hands on a child with no cause. Her firing was the first step. Her arrest will be the second." Marcus nodded slowly. "Make it happen." By noon, the store had been closed to customers. A sign on the door read, "Temporarily closed for staff review." Inside, all current employees were gathered in the meeting area behind the showroom. Marcus stood at the head of the room, wearing a dark suit and expressionless eyes. "This store was built on dignity," he began, voice calm but resonant, "on hard work, on treating people with respect, customers and staff alike. What happened yesterday was the result of a complete failure in judgment and ethics. No one spoke. From this day forward, everyone employed at Jefferson and Company will be required to attend mandatory training on racial sensitivity, anti-bias conduct, and crisis response protocols, he continued. Not once, regularly, no exceptions. A few employees nodded. Others looked down in shame. And let me be absolutely clear, if I ever hear of another incident like this, even a whisper of someone being treated as my daughter was, you will not only lose your job, but I will make sure your career never recovers from it. The silence was thick, the message was received. Later that day, Marcus stood outside the precinct. Reporters had caught wind of the story. A black child, a wrongful arrest, police misconduct, assault by a boutique manager. The narrative was out, and growing. Microphones were shoved toward him as he exited the building. Cameras flashed, questions flew. Mr. Jefferson, is it true your daughter was handcuffed without evidence? Will you be filing a lawsuit against the city? Did race play a factor in the police response? Has your daughter recovered emotionally? He raised a hand, silencing them. My daughter was treated like a criminal in a place she calls home, he said firmly, because of assumptions, because of bias, because she was a young black girl and someone thought that meant danger. He looked directly into one of the main cameras. I will not stop until everyone involved is held accountable. Not just for her, but for every child who's ever been treated like they don't belong. The crowd went quiet. That evening, Miss Conway was arrested. She had returned home thinking perhaps the worst was behind her, that her apology in the store had helped, that being fired would be the end of it. She was wrong. When the officers knocked on her door, she opened it to find 2 detectives and a warrant. Miss Conway, you're under arrest for the assault of a minor and filing a false police report, one said as he cuffed her wrists. Her face went pale. She stammered. I didn't know. You don't get to decide what a child looks like when they belong, the other officer replied coldly. She was led away in silence. The next day, the chief of police released a statement acknowledging the mishandling of the incident. The 2 responding officers were placed on temporary suspension pending a full internal investigation. Body cam footage had been reviewed. Protocols had not been followed. Training sessions were now being scheduled department-wide. At home, Kiana sat on the couch watching the news. Her father stood behind her, one hand resting gently on her shoulder. The screen showed a still image of her from the footage, handcuffed, scared, and then cut to Marcus's press conference. Kiana looked up at him. Is it over? He shook his head. Not yet, but it's changing, because of you. She nodded slowly. I just wanted to wait for you. That's all I was doing. I know, he said, kneeling beside her. And I'll make sure the world knows too. Weeks passed. The story remained in circulation. The city council announced new reforms. Officers would now be required to verify all minor detainments with a parent or guardian before making an arrest. Staff at all public-facing businesses were urged to complete racial bias training. Miss Conway pled guilty. Her sentence included probation, mandatory sensitivity training, and a restraining order preventing her from coming within 200 feet of Jefferson and Company or any member of the Jefferson family. In the boutique, things slowly returned to normal, but with change. A framed photo of Kiana now sat at the front counter. Beside it, a sign read, "We believe children belong here." especially our own. On the day the store officially reopened, Kiana walked through the front doors beside her father. Customers applauded quietly as they entered. Marcus looked down at her. "You ready?" Kiana smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Yeah," she said, "I am." Justice had been served, but more importantly, the world, even if just a little, had been reminded that black children deserve protection, dignity, and the right to be seen as exactly what they are: innocent. Justice was served, but the scars remain. Kiana's story is a reminder that we must keep fighting against prejudice for every child, everywhere. If this moved you, subscribe, like, and share this video. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if this happened to your child?